Have you ever thought about how the mind works? What causes our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors? Well, throughout history, many people have pondered these same questions, leading to the birth of the field we now call psychology. In fact, it's a bit of a mystery and science all in one, where we dive into human behavior, mental processes, and even the way we interact with each other. In this video, we'll start with an overview of how psychology developed, moving through some of the major perspectives that have shaped the field. So, stick around because understanding these foundations is key to grasping how psychology evolved into what it is today. Let's start by going back to ancient Greece. Early philosophers like Plato and Aristotle debated the mind's nature and its relationship to the body. Plato suggested that knowledge is innate, while Aristotle believed it comes from experience. This classic debate set the stage for one of psychology's biggest questions. Is behavior shaped more by nature or by nurture? Now, fast forward a couple of centuries to the 19th century. This was when psychology took a huge leap, evolving from philosophy into a science. In 1879, Wilhelm Wundt established the first psychology lab in Germany, marking the official start of psychology as a field. Wundt was interested in understanding consciousness and used experiments to try and break down the mind into its basic components. His approach became known as structuralism. But not everyone agreed with Wundt. William James, an American psychologist, proposed a new approach called functionalism. Instead of focusing on the structure of the mind, James was interested in the functions and purposes of mental processes. Why do we think, feel, and behave the way we do? This approach shifted psychology's focus from merely describing mental processes to exploring their purpose and practicality. Around the same time, Sigmund Freud introduced psychoanalysis. Freud believed that much of our behavior is influenced by unconscious drives and desires, often stemming from childhood experiences. Even today, psychoanalysis remains one of the most well-known approaches. Then, as we moved into the early 20th century, the behaviorists like John Watson and B.F. Skinner challenged the focus on the mind. They argued that psychology should only study observable behavior since it's more scientific and measurable. This gave rise to behaviorism, which emphasized how we learn through conditioning. You may have heard of Pavlov's famous experiment with dogs and bells. That's a classic example of behaviorism in action. But behaviorism wasn't the end. In the 1950s and 60s, a new wave emerged called Humanistic psychology. Carl Rogers and Ibrahim Maslow focused on human potential, self-actualization, and personal growth. They believed that every individual has the potential to be their best self, which is why humanistic psychology is sometimes called the third force in psychology after psychoanalysis and behaviorism. Finally, as technology advanced, so did psychology. The cognitive revolution of the 1960s introduced new ways to study processes like memory, perception, and problem solving using rigorous scientific methods. This approach paved the way for much of modern psychology and is closely linked with fields like neuroscience today. So, from ancient philosophy to modern science, psychology has evolved through many lenses and approaches. Structuralism, functionalism, psychoanalysis, behaviorism, and cognitive psychology. Each has brought us closer to understanding the mind and behavior. And that's a wrap on today's video. If you find this interesting, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for the next video, where we will dive deeper into each approach and its contribution to psychology. Psychology has come a long way, and we have only scratched the surface of its many approaches. So whether you are exploring the depths of the unconscious or observing behavior, remember, there is always more to the mind than meets the eye. See you next time on Beyond the Mind.